Take me through what it was like in those early days and how you've seen it develop and grow. But how different is the internet today than you once expected it to be back then?
So I was a techno utopian. I thought that almost nothing but good things were going to come from what we were describing because I was at this from the very beginning. I believe that humans are inherently good, that we can seek significance and do work that we care about. Um, what I failed to calculate were two things. One, anonymity, which causes people to do bad things. If someone walks into a bank with a stocking over their head, they're probably not there to make a deposit. I'm just saying. And number two, the selfish needs of media. That
Mm.
once media companies discovered that they could make a profit pitting anonymous people against each other, they decided to do that in a big way. And once people like Instagram decided that making millions and millions and millions of teenage girls fundamentally unhappy for the rest of their lives was a way to make a profit, they decided to do that. So these were things I didn't fear or expect, and I'm disappointed by. But I also know that it is the biggest shift in the history of 10,000 years of humanity. That you and I are having a conversation right now, and I've never met you before. I don't even know what city you're in, and we're like, we got right into it in 2 minutes. That was inconceivable just 30 years ago.
On the point of media and how it shapes culture, you have this quote here, which I really liked and pulled out in my research, which is, we believe we see the world as it is, but we live in culture, and culture changes what we see. And culture is driven by media, and media is driven by a business model.
Right.
How does that resonate?
Well, I mean, the model of the internet, so when I started Yo-Yo Dine with my own money, we needed to be profitable every month or we were going to have to go out of business. We quickly had a competitor called iOne that had raised $70 million in cash. So it was really hard to compete against that. And the idea that an idea could get millions of dollars and then find customers who didn't have to pay to be customers shifted what got built because you could delay the creation of value for a long time. And that plus the network effect meant that certain natural monopolies would show up, like YouTube or Google or Facebook, et cetera. And over time, if they didn't have competition, they would stop paying attention to what users needed and wanted because the switching costs were too high. And so we ended up with something that was the opposite of what the founders set out to do.
How do you think about changing that structure and changing the culture? Obviously, it's your life's work in a sense to change the culture. But what are some of the wins you've noticed along the way where you're like, wow, what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing is actually making an impact? Does anything come to mind?
Well, those are two different questions. The first one, as a media theorist, is that federation and what Cory Doctorow calls adversarial interoperability, which is a lot of syllables but useful, are the answer. That Mastodon is doing a fine job of not crashing because there is no such thing as Mastodon. There is just a protocol that anybody who wants to can use. And once you have protocols, then we can become the better angels of our nature because you can build something without Mark Zuckerberg's permission. And podcasting has lasted much longer than I expected, and that's part of the reason. There's no one in charge of podcasting. I have no idea if podcasting.com is even a thing. Doesn't matter. What matters is if you find your 1,000 or your 5,000 or your 10,000 listeners and your expenses are pretty low because you don't have fancy microphones and cameras, then you could do fine, right? And that is the internet at its best. So federation, lots of independent entities interacting with freedom. That's what markets do when they work properly. In terms of my work, I think what I've been trying to do is help people realize that significance is available to them, to stop being brainwashed by industrial indoctrination to stop paying attention to whether this will be on the test and to realize we only get this one precious life, are you doing work you're proud of?